Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Matthew Dickerson. Tech Talk. Sit back and relax. It's time to talk technology.
Wake up, sleeping beauties. It's time for Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. It's the perpetual itch scratcher for those of you wondering about what the future has to offer for you and yours. And today, we'll be delivering in spades. And get a spadeful of this, folks. We're looking into what future crop farming is going to be like. And we're going to show you how precision farming, even when we're talking like hectares of land, will save you time and money and bring in bigger yields, if you're a farmer, that is. Now, on top of that, we've got a story about super healing electric bandages. And as if electric bandages isn't enough to lock you in, how about the feud that is about to erupt between the Melbourne Metro and the Royal Melbourne Hospital? We have ringside tickets for you there. But to bring us all the facts, welcome to the microphone, futurist extraordinaire, Matthew Dickerson.
How are you going today?
Not too bad at all.
We are recording this obviously a week in advance, so we do record not the day that it comes out. So it is a little bit delayed here. We're going to talk about Father's Day, so Father's Day will be a week behind. But the kids struggled. The kids were trying to find me something technology related for Father's Day. And they said to me after they gave me my Father's Day presents that they were really struggling. They were looking around because they know I love my technology. But it's one of those things that how do you get something present when they're just so involved in technology? They've got all the latest gadgets. So what they came up with was their version of some basic technology. A back stretcher with an extendable arm.
Fantastic. Just what you need, because you've got to get that spot.
Well, you've got to get that spot. And I thought it was a back scratcher to begin with. They said, no, it's not just a back scratcher, it extends. So I extend it out, and yes, I can reach every spot on my back now with that.
So it extends with the press of a button?
Well, that would have been nice. I would have enjoyed that to be able to extend it. I would have thought just tell it to go to a certain level. I went 18 centimetres things. But this is a bit old-fashioned. They thought they'd go a bit old school and you just pull it out. Or slide it back in.
Technology is really any tool that we use, so they do pass with that.
Well, I'm with you, because I often have that discussion about what is technology, and when you think about it, and I go back to caveman, when caveman had a rock and started breaking up something, well, that was a tool that maybe became a hammer, or when they used technology. A rock. Yeah, that's right, when they used a rock to maybe sharpen a bit of timber to come up with something that was a bit sharper to cut up some meat maybe. There was maybe a basic knife, so that was technology. So any tool that helps us is technology, so I'm calling the back scratcher a bit of technology.
Excellent. Well done, kids. You've done a great job.
That's right. That's the best they could do. So. And I admit I'm difficult to buy for, so they're okay with that.
Okay, we better get stuck straight into our stories. Enough of this Father's Day jibber-jabber. Now, we've all been there, sweltering under the hot sun, toiling away on an outdoor task. Hopefully not on Father's Day, that is. Sometimes only so we can tell others how hot it was and how hard we just worked. When you're mowing a lawn, running maintenance and repairs on the outside of the house, or digging holes all in the midsummer sun, it's not unusual for your mind to wander to wishful thinking of swimming pools and air conditioning. Well, life may get a lot better for some labourers. If you haven't got one yet, Matt, maybe people might like to pick up the latest personal ice vests for themselves. Personal ice vests.
Yeah, ice vests. And it's not just the outdoor workers. All the things that you talked about there are sensible and logical. But we're getting to the stage now where you've got some people in indoor environments, and one of the ones that stands out are baristas in coffee vans.
Oh,
Inside that coffee van gets pretty hot.
Yeah.
Often they're in an outdoor environment. They've got a cover over the top, so they're not in the direct sun. But they're in an enclosed environment. Not easy to air
condition that sort of environment with a big open window anyway.
Big open window, but also you've got heat in there. You're making coffee, so you've obviously got a fair bit of heat in there. So you get some of those environments. A range of environments are changing as well. As we have our climate changing, as we're getting more extremes in our weather, then certainly heat is a big issue. But they've just found things like theme park workers, Formula One teams working in the garage in that hot environment. There's some people exposed to very hot environments. How do you keep them cool? Well, there's a few issues here. Obviously, the employer needs to try and look after the staff. They want to make sure they've got their staff that are safe, but also you want to make sure your staff are productive. There's no good having your staff sitting around going, I need another break, I need to go home, I need to sit down and drink some cold water. So there's a few ways that companies are doing this, bringing out different devices. And one goes back to some work that was done in the 50s and the 60s by the RAF and by NASA, where they'll come up with some sort of personal cooling technology. So forget about cooling the environment you're in, thinking about the room, the coffee van, whatever it might be, just make you as an individual cool. And this was going back to the Defence Forces with body armour, that type of thing, where you're wearing some things that are pretty hot. Even the police, I mean, the amount of weight that you have in a normal police uniform is fairly heavy, and it's also covering you up, so you're not getting a lot of circulation there. So ice plates in ice vests is one of these pieces of technology. And essentially they're 1.5 litres of water, but it's not really water, it's a substance. You freeze that, and then it's designed not to just melt, and it's obviously enclosed so it doesn't get wet, but not melt like water. It's designed to keep its coolth a bit longer. I'm not sure if coolth is a word, but if we've got warmth...
It is now.
It is now. If we've got warmth, surely we've got coolth.
That's right.
It's designed not to release that coolth too quickly, because if you've sprained an ankle and you put an ice pack on it, it's way too cold when you first put it on, and then 15 minutes later it's a bunch of water sitting around in the bag you put it in. So ice sometimes is a bit too cold when you first put it on, and then it does melt too quickly. So they basically use a synthetic gel. It puts in the freezer, it gets to obviously 0 or maybe a bit lower than that degrees Celsius, and then releases that coolth over a longer period of time. So
I can imagine if you had a vest loaded with ice, it'd be quite heavy as well, because water is quite heavy.
It is, that's exactly right. So this is probably the same density as water, the gel itself, but it does keep it cooler for longer. So you put it on, you wear that, and it's just next to your body, keeping you cool. And I can think of a whole range of applications that it might be applicable for. Even, I know when I ride mountain bikes, I wear a normal cycling jersey, which is nice and thin, but I wear a camelback on my back. And so just that stops any circulation around my back. So I actually find my back gets quite sweaty, but I thought, a little ice pack on my back would be quite nice when I'm out there riding in the hot summer's day. So that's quite fascinating. But even other solutions. So in Japan, they've got fan jackets. So the first thing I thought of was a jacket for someone that really loves someone, a fan jacket. But these are jackets that have got integrated fans. So they've actually just got a little bit of a gap between the skin and the actual jacket itself, and then fans just to circulate that air around. Because sometimes we get hot and sweaty because there's no circulation.
Yeah.
Our body's doing what it is taught to do or knows to do, sweats, but it needs to have some sort of airflow for that sweat to evaporate and then give the cooling effect. Yeah. Having sweat with nowhere to go is obviously not a lot of use. So
sorry, inbuilt fans in the jacket.
Exactly right. And in such a way that it's designed to circulate around the body. So it's not as if it's just a fan that's blowing directly in one spot. It's circulating that air around the body to try and keep your whole body cool. So we're getting a range of microclimate cooling is the term for all of these different devices, whether it be ice vests, whether it be fans around there, whether it be devices that you actually plug in, so there might be some power there. They haven't really done that well with those so far. Plugging in something to heat up things is relatively easy, and you get reasonably good battery life. You've heard me talk before about my heated socks that I use when I go cycling in winter. So that seems to be reasonably easy to do, but having something you plug in with power to keep things cooler is a lot more difficult. Heating is easy. You run some electricity through something and then that obviously heats up. But we know with refrigerators, there's a whole process going through with a heat pump to try and cool down a refrigerator. Bit hard to do all that with a little device. So they haven't had a lot of success with a powered device, except for fans, obviously, but it's more been those passive devices. So quite incredible where we're going and the different things we've got to think about in our changing climate. Yeah,
so rather than air conditioning our whole big room, we're now just looking at worrying about just that little space around your own skin.
Yeah, that microclimate, or an earth suit we might call it, where we're just keeping our climate in our little environment just right, and it doesn't matter what's happening outside.
Yeah. We get a little bit excited here when we hear about new advances in medical technology. So when someone mentioned water-activated electric bandages, it got really crazy here. Matt, this is for real. A new wound dressing that you are actually supposed to get wet, and it'll heal open wounds faster than the old school bandages.
We call them a WPED. WPED is the standard initialism for it. Water-powered electronics-free dressing is what they're commonly known as. Well, not sure if it's that common, but that's what they're known as.
Yeah, so they're electric, but they're not electronic.
No, that's right. They generate an electric field. They've got a biocompatible battery as part of the bandage built in. And so you've got it there, a box on the shelf. It's not available yet, still in testing, but there's a box on the shelf in a couple of years' time sitting in a pharmacy, and you go, I've got a little cut somewhere on my body, cut my finger, cutting up some onions, whatever it is, And rather than just put a standard Band-Aid, I know Band-Aid is a proprietary name, but most people call them Band-Aids, rather than put a standard Band-Aid on there, you would buy a WPED, a WPED, and you just put that on, and then to activate the biocompatible battery, you just put a drop of water on it, and that activates the battery, and that creates an electronic field around that for maybe a day or so. Then you might just take it off and put another one on there. Theoretically, we know, and I don't like to use the term we know because the testing is still out there, but some of the results are so far showing that the principle of an electric field to create an increase in healing is fairly well established in the medical field. So if we've got that electric field, it'll heal faster. So what do they do with this for testing? Well, the first thing they did was they took some diabetic mice. Now, I was intrigued by this. I went and researched this further because I thought, where do you find diabetic mice? Do you go into the pantry and look at the sugar container and go, there's my diabetic mice? They actually breed mice to be diabetic mice. So they actually go through a specific breeding program. So then they can do testing on diabetic mice to come up with solutions. There is also a way they can do some injections into mice to turn them into diabetic mice, but typically they breed diabetic mice. So then if you're looking for diabetic mice, they just had these.
There's a market for them.
That's right. Because one of the things that's common with an open wound is if you've got, you or I cut our finger, we probably put a Band-Aid on it, and a week later it's probably done.
Yeah.
All finished, everything's fine. You didn't know it was there, depending on how badly you cut yourself. With people with diabetes, though, open wounds are a very slow healing open wound. So sometimes it'll take a long time to get better. Having an open wound for a long time isn't great. You can get infections in there. You can get other diseases, other things where you might even need to have a part of your body amputated because it just doesn't heal. So a whole range of potential issues there from a diabetic perspective. So that's why they deliberately breed diabetic mice to do some of this testing. So they've done some of this testing for these WPEDs on diabetic mice. So it doesn't sound like a great life, does it? You get bred with diabetes, then you get cut deliberately, so you've got a wound, and then you have
the life of a mouse.
That's right. Then you have a WPED put on you. But they found the healing process was about 30% faster with these WPEDs compared to a normal Band-Aid. And I've seen the marketing. I don't know if I can base this on all true factual information, but I've seen the marketing where you see a Band-Aid put over half a cut on someone's leg and the other half is left open, and the bit with the Band-Aid over it heals faster. So I'm assuming here, without any data to back me up, that putting a covering over a wound makes it heal faster, but then putting a covering over it with an electric field makes it heal 30% faster again. So all sounds good. Again, all part of testing at the moment. Researchers are working on all of this as we speak. But I think...
I wonder if these are going to become a really big thing in emergency wards, and just the capacity of them to be able to bring about that rapid healing, where you've got some like major trauma happening, like open wounds and stuff.
Yeah, I'm not sure how far we'll go there, but I'm convinced within 2 years' time we'll see these in pharmacies. You'll go in and you'll go, I can just buy the standard Band-Aid, or I can buy the WPED because that'll heal my wound 30% faster. So I think it'll be at that point. And as I mentioned before, you just use that until essentially the battery goes flat, and then you take that bandage off, which is about the useful life of that bandage anyway, and you put a new one on. So you'd use it like a normal Band-Aid, but it would just heal things faster. Yeah. So again, all interesting, and just we keep finding out more and more about the human body and then come up with different solutions to help it.
First it was just a cat playing the piano. And then Grumpy Cat launched into memes and took the world by storm, and suddenly it became clear what the internet was actually for. Well, there's been a lag in new cat material lately, and the internet almost lost its purpose entirely. Matt, thankfully AI spotted the glitch and has stepped in to save the day with some new cat stuff.
Thank the Lord. Thank goodness for this. And I don't know why cats are preferred to dogs. Surely dogs are cute and cuddly as well?
There was a thing ages ago called The Sad Dog Diaries. If you haven't seen that, look it up. It's hilarious. But anyway, so they're not completely forgotten, but yeah.
But they're not as popular as cats, are they? What is it about cats? Maybe cats are a bit of an enigma. They're a bit mysterious. You can't really connect with a cat. So when we see cat videos, we feel like we're connecting to them a bit more. Where dogs are jumping all over us and licking our faces, and they're really friendly. And
we can analyse the psychology of this for the rest of the podcast.
We could, that's right. So you're right. We just saw cat video after cat video when YouTube was really getting started and when videos were starting to be seen a lot on the internet. It just seemed like what else could you do with your cat, and what did you have to do with that cat to get it to do the thing that you supposedly showed it to do? So that was just about to the nth degree.
Yeah.
And then along came AI. Now, people are a bit divided over this. So you've got Chubby and Chubby Jr. And if you just go and search for Chubby the cat, you'll find on whatever platform you use videos of Chubby and Chubby Jr. Charles, a guy named Charles, created Chubby, and he puts Chubby in some pretty emotionally engaging situations, tearjerkers I'd call them, where Chubby has some pretty terrible things happen. And so that makes people sad. You've even got Chubby crying, you've got Chubby being bullied at school, you've got Chubby being arrested, you've got Chubby doing all sorts of terrible things, and they're all really sad, and that creates millions upon millions of views. One video, 50 million views. It's just incredible.
My goodness.
And these are all AI generated. So that's where people are a bit divided about it. Do we really want to get so obsessed about cats in the first place? And then AI cats, this is just someone creating something. So the cute cat, you had to film them for a while. You might have had to play with it to get it to do something. So there's a bit of a challenge there about getting a real live cat to do something interesting to then post on the internet. But with AI generation, you just go, okay, I'll just make a cat do this. And it's really just your imagination. So it seems like you're cheating in some way, doesn't it?
But I think what that shows is just there's no telling what people will watch. So people will just watch any rubbish.
So you're right. So this is more a commentary on society.
This is an enormous commentary on society, and it's just one of those reels, and people will just buy into it.
They do, and so it gets worse. So not only have you got Chubby, in these various tearjerker situations, but then Charles thought it would be good to introduce some music, and let's do some covers of popular songs. But Chubby meows the songs. So the most popular
one. How many views?
The most popular so far has been Billie Eilish's What Was I Made For? So beautiful song, but you've got Chubby meowing that song. And apparently Billie Eilish is okay with it. I'm sure Billie Eilish got paid some copyright money, but it just seems crazy. Some people are saying all it is Charles manipulating social media algorithms to get views to monetize that. And Charles says, yes.
Yeah,
exactly
like no secrets. And I'm abusing a system, and like, so what do you do? How do you rebel against this? You just don't watch Chubby.
I better just watch it one more time to see if he really is manipulating the system.
Stop showing it to all my friends.
That's right. So it is quite incredible. And so I don't want to say it now, but yes, go and Google Chubby and just have a look at what Chubby's up to. It's quite incredible that people are so obsessed with
And
this.
I also think can you find something better to do with your time?
Go and solve world hunger or something like that.
That's right. Now, exactly how many heads of wheat or barley would you expect to grow in a hectare? Now, here's me estimating. I'm going to estimate it's well over a dozen. That's lots of plants to individually survey, folks. So there's a lack of if there's a lack of trace elements or a need to spray herbicide or pesticide, it's just easier to blanket spray a whole area. And that has got to be an expensive job. And a bit wasteful too, I've got to say. Matt, with all this technology at our fingertips, there has to be an easier, cheaper and more efficient way, for sure.
We've actually already been using drones to have a look at crop health and look at what's happening out in the farming environment. And I say this a lot of times, I think farmers are very early adopters of technology. When you've got your land, you've got only so much land you can use, assuming you don't go and buy up your neighbours, you've got to maximise the efficiency of that. So we've had farmers using self-driving tractors for a long time to maximise the efficiency of what they might be doing, whether it be sowing or using some sort of herbicide or fertiliser, whatever it might be. So farmers have been very good at adopting new technologies. That's fantastic. What we've got here now is we have used drones before, but the drone sensors, the actual optical sensors on there, have been used in certain ways, but there's been a huge development now made by a collaboration with RMIT University, City University of New York, and the University of Melbourne. And they've gotten together and they've come up with some vanadium dioxide as the imaging technology or the sensor. And what that allows them to do is to give much better monitoring of a whole range of things to do with the crop. For example, you can look at crop health, you can look at irrigation needs, you can look at images about pests that might have been attacking your crop. So then, exactly as you said, you can then say, right, I've now looked at my crop, the drone's flown over my crop, and I've got this really accurate information, and I know that this area over here is a bit dry for whatever reason, so let's irrigate that part over there. This area over here, gee, it's looking not quite as good. There might be some trace elements missing. There might be some fertiliser required. Let's go and fertilise this area here. And damn, look, we've got some damage from some pests over there. So let's go and apply some pesticide to this part. So the first thing you get is reduction in the amount of materials that you're inputting into the crop, because that's all part of the cost of growing a crop.
Exactly.
So if we can reduce the amount of various inputs, whether it be fertiliser, whether it be water, whether it be pesticides, that reduces the cost of producing that crop. But the second part is we've got to feed 8 billion people across this planet. So if we can work out ways to make that crop perform better, so rather than just go, oh, well, I just accept that that's my crop and some parts are going to be better than others. No, I'll treat different parts of that with fertiliser, with water, whatever, and get to that stage where I'm maximising the output from that. So minimise the cost of the input, maximise the output. Both of those sound like a pretty good combination. So this particular lens they're using now, you can't go and buy a drone with this lens on it yet, but there's a patent already they've got for it in the US, there's a patent pending for it in Australia. So essentially you'll maybe be a year down the track before you'll be able to buy a drone that will have this type of technology. And I'd imagine there'll be companies out there who would rent out their drone and their services, so they would come along maybe twice a year through a season and say, we'll just do an automatic analysis of your crop for you. They send the drone off, it does that. Here's the mapping of that. You might buy your own, you might do it yourself. I'm sure there'll be lots of options there. But the good part about this is just getting that really accurate information. The next stage, which is incredibly exciting but not there yet, is when you can start to use this same technology from a satellite perspective. At the moment, it's only fairly close range. The sensors they're using for this really need to be a drone not that far above the crop to get a really good, accurate view. But they're working on satellite technology where at some point in time, low Earth orbit satellites sitting at 400, 600 kilometres above the Earth will be able to do something very similar. And then that'd be pretty exciting because you could almost get a daily update if you wanted. I'm sure there'll be some services out there that would offer something there where you'd have a daily or weekly update, something that would be a very common, rather than send out a drone manually. It would just be, satellites going over the place every few hours, so we'll just get an update on that. So that's a few more years down the track before we get there with that one yet, but quite incredible. Again, we think we've got drones that are working and doing a great job, but people are still developing different parts to make it even better.
It's just an amazing field, an amazing area of technology that's just growing and growing and growing at such a rapid rate, the use of drones. Now, in maintaining a fan base in motorsport, the challenge has always been to engage the spectator with vision that brings them as close as possible to the action, to that of the driver. With previous camera technology, cabin-mounted or helmet-mounted cameras, I'll spit that out, were great, but they gave you every single bump and knock in the road, and then maybe even some more. Shaky pictures at best. It's been hard to get the driver's perspective to be watchable on some tracks, Matt, but up until now, we've got this new camera that's come out with a gyroscope, yeah?
A gyro camera. Now, let's go back a little bit. I don't remember exactly when it was, but it was probably sometime in the 70s when Australia pioneered this, having cameras in the cars and having live feeds. And if you look at some of those images from back in the days, and I'm talking about Alan Moffat, Peter Brock,
yeah,
those
the
great
around
drivers.
Bathurst,
Yeah, and they had a studio camera mounted in the car. So the big studio camera there, they had extra brackets put in the car to have this camera mounted in the car. And it was interesting because you got an in-cabin view.
And it was new.
It was new, but it was terrible in terms of, as you said, how shaky it was and every bump. And that camera was not built to be going along at a couple hundred kilometres an hour over the various bumps and corners that you had in any racetrack. Not many bumps in a racetrack, but you still get some obviously in there. So Australia pioneered that. I think it might have been Channel 7 pioneered all of that. That was fantastic. We've come so far since that now where it's at the point where every car on modern races has got some little camera. And actually, if I go forward a little bit, when Formula One first started introducing cameras, they couldn't afford to put a camera on every car. So they only put a camera in a couple of cars. But those drivers said, I don't want the camera on my car because an extra bit of air resistance, extra bit of weight will be a negative impact for me. So what they ended up doing was where they mounted the camera, every car in the race had the same device mounted there, and only a couple actually had a camera in there. So you didn't have drivers saying, I don't want it on my car. So that was, again, we've come a long way now. It's just in every car and helmets and all the rest of it. Yeah. But I am a bit of a Formula One fan, and you've heard me mention Formula One from time to time before. But at the Dutch Grand Prix, which was a couple of weeks ago, they introduced a new camera. Do you think, we've developed cameras, surely. They've got every little thing you could possibly have in a camera. But they developed a new gyro camera. And you do see that some of the shots you do see now from the helmet camera or right beside the helmet, and it is a shaky thing, and you think, that can't be how the driver is really seeing the road, because if it was,
your focus?
That's right, you couldn't possibly. You're watching that going, I know these drivers are incredible athletes, but you just couldn't, your eye sockets would be vibrated out.
And it's always been interesting, but we're working off a standard that's less than the best.
Yeah, that's right. So the new gyro camera was introduced. I actually felt a bit sick. I watched some of the Formula 1 footage from the Dutch Grand Prix, and I actually got a bit of motion sickness. I watched it for a while and went, I just can't keep watching this. The Dutch Grand Prix is famous for some bank turns, and so a bit like a motorbike that's leaning around a corner, the Formula 1 cars, rather than staying relatively flat most of the time, are actually banking. And so the gyroscope, it's a bit like a gimbal if you like, the gyroscope gave you a much smoother image, but also as the car banked, you could actually see the horizon flat, and you're banking around with the car. So you can imagine the driver, a bit like a motorbike rider, tilting their head to try and maintain their eyes at a horizontal while the car's banking around at an angle. And it was a really immersive experience. I found it actually like you were much more in the car, rather than this view that it was bouncing around and shaking around and it didn't give you a realistic view. I'm not sure they're going to use it a lot this year, because it is still new technology for them.
And it sounds like it's going to take some getting used to.
For the viewer, yes, that's right. And a lot of the images now, you can actually choose different camera angles depending on what service you're using. You can actually choose a car angle or an external angle, or choose your favourite driver. So even if your favourite driver's at the back of the pack, you can still choose their angle. I think you need to get to the stage where you could choose it, because you wouldn't want to have this as the only footage for a length of time, because literally people were complaining about some of it because they were getting sick, and I wasn't physically ill, but I could just feel myself going, wow, if I keep watching this for too long, I'm just feeling a bit dizzy as I'm watching
seasick,
it. A bit seasick maybe. So quite incredible, but lots of sports. We're getting this better in lots of sports. So MotoGP, for example, just V8 supercars, so many different motorsports have got cameras, and the cameras are getting smaller, they're transmitting that live footage, they're getting better quality, and then getting to the stage where it's more stable. Other sports, I mean, imagine watching an Aussie rules match where you've got cameras mounted somewhere on the player. Imagine it getting that small.
That'd be ridiculous.
It'd be crazy. And again, I'm sure the players wouldn't love it, because you've got some extra weight you're carrying around, and maybe potential injury if you've got something when you get tackled and it might push against you somewhere. But just seeing that angle, I want to get cameras in the balls. I reckon that'd be quite incredible. Seeing the ball fly through the air with some way of keeping a still image, I'm not sure how you do that, and then being caught in a mark somewhere. So that'd be quite incredible. I think lots of sports, you're getting better cameras all the time. And even just the drones. At the Olympics, you saw some of the drone footage going over some of the athletes for different things. Underwater cameras.
Yeah, for any sport. It's just about giving the viewer a different experience to what they've had in the past.
You want to feel like you're there in it, and it is getting much better at that now compared to what it used to be. So yeah, keep an eye out on that. Go and look at Formula One. There is some incredible gyro footage coming out of it now.
Now, deep down inside, we all like to watch a bit of a scuffle between some big heavy hitters. Now, we've got a story of one old boy who was a bit clumsily bowling into the marked territory of another boy. And the dust-up is going to take some clever problem-solving. Matt, the Melbourne Metro system has upgraded and is interfering with medical diagnostics at one of the big Melbourne hospitals. How is this panning out?
Yeah, badly.
So there's been a big change to the Melbourne Metro, I presume.
Yeah.
In the way they do things. Is it a new route? Or
it's a new route they've come out with, and this is having an impact. So EMI, was electromagnetic interference, was first discussed and first addressed way back about 1934. So we've been aware of it for a while.
Yeah.
And you think about where we are today, basically every bit of electronics has some type of EMI, but mostly it's such a small area away from that piece of electronic equipment, that it's not really having much of an impact. And people are familiar when you get on planes and they turn your phones off and everyone ignores that and uses their phone anyway, but suppose that's going to interfere with the equipment on the plane. So we're aware that there's interference happening. Even our radios, sometimes you might get in a car with an old radio and you turn it on and you can just hear it come in and out. Sometimes it might be lack of reception, it might be just different electromagnetic fields. So we're vaguely aware of that, but think about all the different things that are creating some sort of electromagnetic field now, today, compared to 100 years ago.
That's
so
right.
it's obvious we're going to get more interference. But we think about those things, about little household appliances, or maybe we're trying to tune into a TV station if anyone still watches free-to-air TV, and you might get some interference from different devices in your house. All those type of things. But
you remember you used to, if you got a message on your phone and you had a speaker on somewhere, you'd hear it come through the speaker, as you,
That's right. And a lot of the devices didn't have much shielding because they didn't need it. Think about, say, a speaker or a radio in your house. You didn't really have a large emitting device in your home until you got a mobile phone. Suddenly it's transmitting with enough power to get to a tower a kilometre or two away. So we had to have better shielding with a whole range of things. And when you talk about magnetic resonance imaging machines, MRI machines, then most of the time they've got some form of Faraday cage around the room that the machine's in. And that's probably been more to stop the magnetic interference going outside the room. And sure, it stops it from coming in the room as well.
It's the same principle on a lot of microwave ovens. They've got that on the window of the microwave oven. There's a mesh or something. So that's just to cause interference for the emitted radiation coming from that area.
Well, funny you should mention microwave oven. Let me tell you a little funny story about a microwave oven and EMI. The Parkes radio telescope, most people are familiar with that. It was involved in receiving signals from the moon landing back in 1969, so we're very familiar with it. We've got the movie, of course, called The Dish that talks very much about the dish and the various things that happen with that. But over at the Parkes radio telescope, I was over there talking to them one day about a range of things, and they told me the story, and they guarantee this is a factual, absolute story that happened, where they had some mysterious radio signals that were coming in, because it's often listening for things from space, and they seemed to come from space. They were known as perytons, P-E-R-Y-T-O-N-S. So they were convinced these were coming from space. This went on for several years until finally there was a link made that when some staff occasionally
were heating up their...
Well, not so much when they're heating, but when they wouldn't wait for the microwave to finish and they just press the open button. Now, we all know that when we open a microwave oven, it stops.
Yeah.
But for just a nanosecond or two there, signals are still being transmitted when that door is open. So when the door is opened, some of these microwave signals would escape, and then they would be picked up by the radio telescope, and people would go, "Oh, I've just got another one. Oh, wow, let's go and research that a bit more." So this went on for several years until finally someone put the two together and said, "Hold on, Mary just had a cup of coffee, just do that again, Mary." And Mary did, hold on, we think there's a link there. So absolutely they created found this link between opening the microwave oven door and receiving these signals at the telescope. So a directive had to be put out. Stop the microwave before you open the door, or maybe just buy a new microwave oven. Maybe that was better as well. So we do get electromagnetic waves, electromagnetic interference that changes a whole range of things. But normally, in a hospital, when you've got an MRI there, the Faraday cage is protecting it in both directions and you're okay. When you then go and build a tunnel underground, no one that was building that tunnel said, let's make sure we haven't got an MRI above us somewhere, because you wouldn't be thinking about it. We're trying to go, the advantage of going underground is you can go from A to B in pretty much a straight line.
That's it. You've got so many other things to worry about.
Let's go down deep enough and just go straight line, no problem, it's all under control. Most of these lines are around about 40 metres deep. Not all, some are a bit deeper than that, but around the Melbourne Metro, about 40 metres deep. And just the electric currents that are running through the lines to drive the train create a magnetic field around about 60 metres.
Wow.
Now, the Earth doesn't absorb much of that. Obviously, things that are metallic, things that can absorb that radio signal, are not between the metro tunnel and the hospital. And so then you're getting a strong enough signal that you're getting some artefacts in the actual images that are being created by these MRI machines. So essentially, they started noticing problems there and then started putting two and two together and then took it back to the tunnel was when we started getting these artifacts in. What are we going to do about it? Now, I don't know the end solution here. They're still working on this as we speak, presumably making the Faraday cage better, but you built that when you built the hospital, or you built that when you built the room. It's a bit hard. It's not like a coat of paint you can just go and whack on a bit of extra Faraday cage. So I don't know the solution there. The Metro, they're not going to reroute a tunnel. They're not going to say, whoops, we'll just go and dig a new tunnel out this way and over that way to avoid that hospital. Maybe moving the MRI equipment to a higher floor, but it's not a simple thing. It's not like, let's pick up...
And again, you've still got to have that Faraday cage around.
Yeah, so you've still got to build that somewhere. So I don't know what the end solution will be, but it gives us an idea of some of the problems we have as we keep building out technology, as we keep building out modern technology, what the implications are. We don't always realise the implications of doing something over here, what it might cause over there. So stay tuned on this one. I'm waiting to see what the final solution might be.
Neurological degeneration. So many questions and so few definite answers. Alzheimer's, Parkinson's disease, dementia. They've been the price to pay for our extended longevity. The long bony fingers of these diseases seem to strike indiscriminately. And for people like myself who are ageing uncontrollably, well, the fear is real. Matt, is there any encouraging news on the horizon on this front?
We are screaming into the future, aren't we? At 1 second per second. We're time travellers.
That's it.
And unfortunately, our body seems to be aging at 1 second per second.
Uncontrollably.
Uncontrollably, that's right. Now, one of the things that we talk about with AI that's a huge advantage of AI is it can remember lots of stuff. You and I can look at things and we can remember it for now, and then as time goes on, we forget a bit and it becomes a bit more fluid in our memory of that, and eventually we might forget it altogether. If we looked at maybe 1.6 million brain scans, I'm pretty confident by the time we looked at the last one, well, we'll be very old for a start, but we probably wouldn't have a lot of recollection about how that might compare to the first one. But AI can remember that, but more to the point, AI can analyse that. So what they've done over in Scotland is they've used AI to look at 1.6 million brain scans that have been collected from patients over a 10-year time frame, 2008 to 2018. And in all of those brain scans, they know the diagnosis or the potential diagnosis, in other words, the future diagnosis of those images. So then with all that information stored away, they're now showing images of a brain scan to AI, to this AI tool, and saying, tell us what the future holds for this brain. Having all that information from these 1.6 million brain scans, AI says this person will have dementia in 5 years' time, or whatever it might be. Now, again, how accurate does it do this? Well, the future will tell us, but when it did then go back and look at images from the past, not the sample set, and then made predictions about it, the predictions were very accurate in terms of what was being predicted going forward. So are you getting some early signs of dementia now? I forgot where I put my car keys. Is that an early sign of dementia? Or did I just forget where I put my car keys? So these are the things that we as humans think about a little bit and go, not sure. But AI can actually look at these brain scans and go, yes, this person is starting to get dementia, and start to do things now to try and slow that down. We don't know a way to stop it. We can't. We have no cure for these cognitive degenerative diseases, but we do know that we can slow down the advance of these. So if we can do that, early detection is obviously important in that. So early onset dementia, someone in their 40s is probably not going on and being tested, but if you had a brain scan that might go, you're going to get dementia in 20 years' time, so start looking at things now, because maybe you can hold it off till you're 80 or 90 rather than when you're 60 or 70. Yeah. So this is one of the powers of AI. One of the things that I think is incredible about AI is to just look at sample sets and make decisions based on this incredible detailed analysis that a human could never possibly do. You couldn't look at that many for a start, but even if you looked at typical samples, for a human to remember that, an incredibly talented doctor to remember that, those couple of indicators on that brain scan, I know what that means. I know this is an indication of early onset or whatever it might be. You can't have all that recollection there, whereas AI can.
Amazing. There's going to be a flood of people going to get MRIs.
Yeah, and
maybe not at the Royal Melbourne Hospital. But,
that's right, maybe not. But it's great work being done. And so this has got a team of 20 researchers from the universities of Edinburgh and Dundee. So again, it doesn't matter where it is in the world. When this work's done, we'll have access to this information. So yeah,
Amazing.
quite incredible.
Now here's something I didn't know previously. Many mainframe computers essential to banks and airlines and government departments are running on a code that is over 65 years old. I suppose it's not that incredible. I'm communicating to you in a code first developed around about 1450 AD, I think it was, the English language. But this story is about computer security and all. Matt, I gather a lot of places have moved on, but for the groups still on this computer language called COBOL, when there are problems that arise, there are only very few people who can still write a code to solve them.
I'm going to go back and brush up on my COBOL skills. I didn't realise there was such a demand for COBOL. I do remember playing with COBOL many years ago, but there's still a lot of mainframe computers, such as banks or airlines, government departments, they're still using COBOL. And most of the people that are doing any programming in this are aged in their 60s and their 70s. They're trying to retire, but then I'm sure some employer says, don't retire because we've got no one in their 20s or 30s coming through because it's not a common language now, despite the fact that COBOL stands for Common Business-Oriented Language. It's not actually that common anymore. But I've talked to you before about when I was doing some programming a month or two ago, and what I found that was really good was remembering the exact syntax for the things that I had to use in terms of the commands and remembering exactly where that common entered to go, those sort of things. That's difficult, and when you're doing a lot of programming, it just comes very natural. When you haven't done it for a while, remembering that.
Like any language you use.
Exactly right. And I did say to you that I was cheating. I was using a bit of ChatGPT to go, give me the syntax for this particular code and just, more or less show me this bit of code that I can go and apply to this particular part that I needed to do. And it made it very easy for me just to not have to try and remember all those bits. It just had the syntax. Oh, that's right. I remember that semicolon there or the colon there or the bracket there, whatever it might be. And so that was a way of cheating rather than going back and looking up all those individual commands. So they're doing the same with COBOL, where they're actually using AI to learn the language for a start, and then they've still got programmers, but they don't need as many because at the moment they can't find the programmers. So it's not doing people out of a job, but they're saying to one programmer, okay, here's an AI tool. When you need to make that change, someone wants a different report, someone wants something different, go and get AI to do it. You might need to check it or just check the output to make sure it's correct. But they're basically using AI to write the code for some of these very old mainframes. Where will we go with this? Will it get to the point where the manager of that department who's got no COBOL skills at all can simply say to an AI tool, write me that bit of code to do this, and it does that, and they use that code? Probably. I think that's going to happen. At this age, it's not, but there are millions of lines of undocumented code that are being used in some of these mainframes, and trying to remember, I know myself, and I'm writing not millions of lines of code, but you go back and look at stuff you wrote years ago, and I am very good at putting comments through things because I learned at a very early age that you need to make sure you comment your programming. But I look at those comments and I go, oh, what did I do there? How did yeah. So you go through and you work out what you did with lots of good comments, but some of this code, millions of lines, are just undocumented. People wrote it, it did the job, end of story, I'll move on to the next job. Yeah. Not thinking that maybe decades later you might need to do it. So crazy. Are we going to get lots of our programmers replaced? Do we need to even learn computer programming at university anymore? Well, probably. We need to have someone that actually understands what's being written. But I think we're going to see more and more of this where AI is really good at just writing code.
It'll be a dying art. It'll go the way of the Coopers and the farriers and the seamstresses.
Right. And what do you do? I'm a code programming, computer programmer. It's like, what is that? I can't remember people doing that. But one thing I did find...
It'll be like one of those things that you have at at Sovereign Hill where you've got a blacksmith working away in his shop. And over here we've got the guy working away on his computer typing out COBOL.
But I did actually find some of the work when I was getting AI or ChatGPT just to write some bits of code for me, I'd look at it and go, no, but surely we can do it this way better. And ChatGPT is very polite. Oh, actually, you're right. Yes, here's a better way to write that bit of code. Because sometimes it would do something, and I always try to be efficient in my programming. Yeah. Maybe 3 or 4 different lines to do something that I'm sure you could do in one line, and you'd suggest that, and they'd give it to you. So it's not perfectly what it does, but it still gave you a solution. It still gave you something that would work, but it just didn't work maybe the most efficient way. So I think we're going to see more and more of this where AI is used as a programming tool.
Canberra Canberra is a very cleverly put together sort of city. If you've been there, you know. And in 2024, it's getting a facelift, ironically by way of turning down the lights. Canberrans are looking to lead the way for Australia to minimise light pollution, and the folks at Mount Stromlo Observatory have given it the thumbs up, Matt.
We're actually near the Siding Spring Observatory at Canberra, at the Warrumbungle National Park, and we are in an area called a dark sky. And there's certain regulations in all the development applications that are submitted within a several 100-kilometre radius of Canberra, where they've got to make sure they reduce the amount of light pollution so this dark sky can be maintained. And so people that go to the various observatories around Warrumbungle National Park talk about the fact that they've got a better view of the night sky because we've got a dark sky around the area. Mount Stromlo is not quite the same because you've got a lot of light coming from somewhere like Canberra. But in some of the trials they've been doing, there's been a couple of things they've done. First of all, they've installed 30,000 smart LED street lights. So that's a good start for a start. You're reducing the amount of power you're using. But when you think about it, most of the time, those street lights are there and no one is using them because we're all tucked up in bed nicely.
Yeah.
So between 11 p.m. and 5 a.m., they basically reduce these down when they've got essentially around about a 50% level of brightness to what they would normally have. And then if I drive my car along, there's sensors in there and it goes back up to full brightness. If I walk along the footpath, it goes back up to full brightness. And we've actually used these in...
It's amazing.
It is. Where we live now, we've got Tracker-Riley Cycleway, and we've got exactly the same technology. As you walk or ride your bike along Tracker-Riley, you'll see the lights at night time get a bit brighter. And it's exactly the same technology where they're dimmer, and then when you need them, they go brighter, and then a minute or so after you've gone past them, they go back dimmer again. That's in a cycleway or a walkway, but Canberra has used them in their street lighting. And there's a few things I love about this idea. The first thing is, yes, it gives you a better dark sky. So people at Mount Stromlo have said, we're already getting a better view of the night sky. We're getting an ability to see things we couldn't see before because we don't have light pollution. And light pollution is something that sounds ridiculous. Light pollution, really? Is that a big issue? It's going to be more and more of an issue because we get so much light pollution. But the other thing is, you're burning up something, whether it be renewable energy or coal that you're burning, but you're using some energy for something that is not really achieving much. If you've got lights in the street and no one can see it, do we really need those lights? Are they really required there? You need them when somewhere along, and people might feel unsafe if suddenly all the streets were dark, so you have them at a reduced lighting output, that's fine, but then have them brighter when you actually need them. But the other thing that's a great source of frustration is that most councils that are paying for electricity to the local electricity provider are paying in an unmetered fashion. So in other words, when you've got all your street lights, you're paying the electricity provider, but it's based on the number of street lights, not any metering, because you don't have meters on individual street lights. No. So it's just, you've got X number of street lights, we multiply that by a number, and there's how much we charge you. This would be much better with smart LED lights, where you could say, for a start, we're using less power, LED, but because they're smart, you can actually get a very accurate indication of how much power is being used. So you could say to the electricity provider, no, this is how much we need to pay you because this is how much electricity we're actually using rather than just some sort of guesstimate. Yeah. So a whole range of advantages. I think that we'll see more and more of this. And are we going to get at the stage where we just have all street lights that are driven by solar panels? And I was at a friend's place recently and he'd bought for an incredibly small amount of money something that was lighting up his garden area, which looked essentially like a street light. It wasn't as bright as a street light. Had a solar panel, had a battery, had the light, and it was under $100 he paid for it, and that was enough to light up his area there. Now, you'd use something a bit better than that for a street light, but are we getting to the point where you say, forget the cost of that power to run that, use LEDs, use a battery that you might replace every 5 years and use some solar panels on that, and that's the standard for street lights going forward. Maybe we'll get to there some stage. So this is one step along the way.
It's amazing to. It's an excellent solution to a problem I didn't even know really was there.
Exactly right. And we're good at that, aren't we? We're good at creating solutions to problems we didn't know existed.
And on that note, the lights are dimming here in the studio, which is our hint to finish up and get the hell out of here. Thanks for another sensational Tech Talk, Matt.
Well, I'm not convinced what to do next. Formula One, go and watch a bit of that Gyro, or Chubby. Maybe Chubby driving a Formula One car with a Gyro camera. Charles, if you can do that for me, then I'm there. I'm going to be watching Chubby drive an F1 car.
Sounds like an afternoon well spent. It's what everyone else is doing, quite clearly.
Yeah, obviously.
Thanks for tuning in once again, ladies and gentlemen. Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson is produced in a clean room with the most exquisite dust extractors designed to remove the very finest nanoparticles from the air to bring you the purest tech talk possible. I'm James Eddy, wishing you a productive week ahead until we meet again. Remember, Tech Talk, like a fine wine, is a podcast best enjoyed with friends, and we want you to have the very best experience. So next time, bring a friend along. See you then.